So I'm going to walk through a couple concepts from our book and just reiterate some of the, I think, most foundational questions we're grappling with, and really questions that, through my sister and us working on this book and thinking about this, I think are at the centerpiece of where we need to get to on health and take advantage of our own health empowerment. But I would love for this to be an open session. So I'll do a little bit of rambling, but I would love hard questions, tough questions, personal health, what's happening in DC, what's happening with Secretary Kennedy. I would love to engage on anything on anyone's mind and have this very freewheeling. But just to kind of talk about, it's the topic of the speech, good energy, and what's had a profound impact on me and where I think we're going and need to go in this country. I'll walk through the book, and it's something I talked about earlier today, but the book starts with my sister at the end of medical school choosing between the 42 specialties, and I think that is such a core concept that when you go into a hospital, you are being divided into 42 parts, and then subdivided after that into another 82 parts. And the average American sees over 20 of those specialists. And just this idea and how ingrained it is in the medical system that your skin is a different organ for the dermatologist, that your brain is for the neurologist, the brain surgeons, that your mental health is for the psychiatrist, that your hormone disorders are for the endocrinologist, that your heart issues are for the cardiologist. This concept of siloing is deeply embedded into the healthcare system, and it's really by design. The actual guiding health document that we exist under today is called the Flexner Report, and this is from 1909. And it is the guiding law for health education today. So 1909, and the person who wrote that report was a lawyer for John D. Rockefeller. And John D. Rockefeller found that with his oil byproducts, he could actually use some of the petroleum derivatives to create pharmaceutical products. And probably some good intentions. The medicine was seen as the Wild West, but certainly for profit motive too. He started modern medical schools. So he was the first funder and primary funder to the University of Chicago, Johns Hopkins. And he actually started what we have today as residency programs and the idea of evidence-based medicine, siloing of medicine. And he very intentionally had this written in the report. And it says in the report that still guides medicine today that nutrition, holistic medicine, chiropractic, any other medical modality that's not just identifying a symptom and cutting it open or prescribing a pill for it, that's not real medicine. So I just think it's interesting to know the history, because what we have today is very much ingrained, and it created a system where Casey, in Stanford Medical School, talking about nutrition, talking about exercise, she was reprimanded. Doctors are reprimanded. She was belittled. It's seen as this less than thing to talk about diet or exercise. She was literally told by somebody, you didn't go to nutrition school. So that type of culture that exists today is very much embedded in the medical system. And the other interesting dynamic is back before World War II, nearly 100% of healthcare costs were acute conditions. So a lot of the great medical miracles are advanced surgical procedures that saved our lives, right? Childbirth was 3% death rate in 1900, 2 to 3%. It was more deadly to give childbirth than have breast cancer. So, on the edge case, certainly some medical procedures to make sure 2 to 3% of women didn't die during childbirth, that is a good thing. But now 40% of children are born via C-section. We've gone too far. We've medicalized everything. And that type of siloing that works sometimes for acute issues now is used for chronic issues. And the lie and what this has done is it's erased the tree. It's erased that the tree, the base of it is the same thing. It's not siloed. There's something happening to our cells. And if we can get that right, if we can get our metabolic health right, if we can actually stop listening to the medical system so much, which tells us that ultra-processed food is healthy, that really encourages and recommends a lot of these things, that incentivizes us to have a bad food system and then manage our conditions, not treat them, we'd be a reformed country. But again, this war to not see the base of this tree is real, and I think that's what the energy we really need to have. And from a personal empowerment standpoint, despite all the media narrative and even the narratives from the medical system that you guys and a lot of what we think is anti-science, there is something really real there. And I do think when it comes to chronic conditions, getting outside of that pharmaceutical treadmill and really being on a path of exploration of what's causing that cellular dysfunction at the base is really important. And as we talked about earlier, it really goes to these three core areas. I'm skipping ahead here, but I can't emphasize this enough. There's been a lot of conversations, and this is my personal view, but when we get into the topics of the book or the actual plan, the first part is knowing what's going on inside your body. And I've met so many people who have been battling an autoimmune condition or battling all of these random symptoms, and they're on pill after pill after pill, and then they finally go to a functional medicine doctor. They actually have a doctor that is curious, that goes deeper than those standard 5 blood tests, but sees what their nutrient deficiencies are like, goes deeper on their cholesterol levels, goes deeper on their inflammation markers, measures their insulin resistance. And almost always there's a real blaring warning sign. They're not able to make vitamin D efficiently or process vitamin D efficiently. That leads them to understand there's actually something wrong with their kidney because they have a low amount of a certain supplement. There's really this puzzle that we can all piece together. I think everyone wants to piece together that we're really prevented to from the medical system. And I do think, literally these blood tests, these understanding of these dynamics on this page can really be a tool to help understand what's going on in our body if we are facing some kind of nagging chronic condition and are being prescribed a lot of pills. The ones on the left, the basics, if these 7 biomarkers are under regular levels, by definition, you can't get diabetes. By definition, you're not obese. And almost by definition, you don't have heart disease. You don't have Alzheimer's, which is downstream of diabetes, now called type 3 diabetes. You don't have kidney disease. You're much lower likelihood of having depression. So that's one core thing, is however this means anything to you. And I know, a lot of people I've talked to today don't like to go to the doctor at all, and I fully understand that. But however it makes sense for you, being on a path of curiosity about what the root cause is, and you can tell a lot from these blood tests. And then with a better understanding of what's going on, it does lead you to the basics. With food, again, I think we can turn the entire nutrition department of the government, fire them tomorrow, and I don't mean this hyperbolically. We can cut the billions of dollars that we spend on nutrition research, producing studies saying sugar is healthy. We can cut all funding and literally just replace the government guidance with eat whole food, avoid refined sugar, avoid seed oils, avoid refined grains, and look for food that has nutrient-dense, life-giving minerals. And again, the people say that's too simplified. This is what my sister's going to try to do. This is what they're attacking her on. I do think we need the simple messaging. If we celebrate whole food, I don't care if it's vegan or carnivore. I know a lot of vegans who start that way. They get more curious about whole food, and then they start eating meat. Maybe the other way around. It doesn't really matter. If we get those core inflammatory ingredients out of our diet, we'll be a lot better. On movement, I think it's very notable that we've had disastrous health as gyms start growing. The more gyms, the more unhealthy we are. I think a lot of folks I've talked to here, just in your daily lives, you're moving a lot more than the average American. We're getting 3,000 less steps than people do in Europe. Kids are just basically engineered to be sedentary with the schools that were designed by John D. Rockefeller as well, which basically sit these kids, little boys, at a desk for 8 hours in a sunless room, very little recess. We basically have scientifically created an environment for our kids with our, general processes. And I know a lot of people here have woken up to that. But we've basically looked at what causes a child's metabolic health to fail and basically geoengineered an environment to do that. We sit them in sunless rooms, sedentary, essentially feeding them ultra-processed food, giving them phones at early ages to trigger their chronic stress. I mean, it's literally like we've designed it for disrupting these core biomarkers. So movement's obviously extremely important. Chronic stress, I do think we're having an awakening on that with our children. You look at the suicide and mental health disorders among specifically teenage girls. Antipsychotic drugs, prescriptions for teenage girls has gone up 600% in 8 years. We have a clear crisis happening there, and we're drugging them and drugging them. I've been called by a senator and Secretary Kennedy dangerously anti-science are saying that it might be a concern that 25% of women are on an SSRI and they're exploding among use and antidepressant use among teenagers. And I don't think that's an anti-scientific statement. We have to look at the root cause of that. Obviously there's a lot of culprits, but with technology, again, we don't want to ban all technology necessarily, but there's clearly something happening with the chronic stress of the phones. And then over-medicalization, we have to take a look at. Talked yesterday about, it was shocking to me, we have 2 times as many vaccines as they do in Norway. Until this year, that has been absolutely taboo to study. You can't study it. Well, we're studying it now. We're going to study what that impact has on severe, interventions that maybe aren't even necessary given that other very established countries are doing it, have on kids. We should be insisting on placebo-controlled studies. I mean, it was shocking to me. The FDA commissioner got in, and they have new vaccines, and he asked for a study, and they acted appalled that there was going to be a study conducted. I'm like, that can't be true. They're lecturing us about gold star science. New vaccines didn't require a placebo-controlled study. They're just automatically approved. We couldn't believe it. So he just literally said, we need a study. We need a study, like with the control group, a standard study. And they acted like it was bloody murder. So it's these common sense things, and the divorcing of common sense that exists in healthcare today is really staggering. And it is dark to me because it does, I don't think intentionally on an individual level all the time with people, and these are often good people that work in medicine, but on a systemic level, it is preying on a child being in fear, a child being sick, a child being dependent on drugs. There are huge economic incentives to depend on that. So I think over-medicalization is clearly a very important thing we need to look at. And I think it needs to be okay to say that being on less chronic disease medications is better, and being free of drugs if we can, and looking for more natural remedies is better. So I'll stop there and would love any questions whatsoever, and love to engage. Yes. So you're have AFib and been put on some pills, and they're like, oh, just go along. And then the question is, where does it come from, or? Yeah, well, like why? Yeah, what is the blood thinner? I mean, I know I was put on that stuff to get off the clots, but what started this to begin with? I didn't have it my whole life. So what's being described here is something that happens a lot where. I'll just give another example that I think is analogous. My dad had a procedure, a heart procedure recently, and he had, because of an issue he had, they said don't use a certain catheter, and there was clear instructions, and the medical team didn't read that and put something in that ended up causing an infection, and there was a warning about that. So he gets home. He goes into epileptic shock. I mean, almost died. My sister had to carry him to the car, drive him back to the hospital. I mean, it was very scary. And he was in the hospital then for 3 weeks. He had IVs with the antibiotics. It was a ton of actual work after that. And that, of course, the bill for that, which insurance, and the government paid, was $2 million. And it really represents what I think happens all the time right now in medicine, where there's zero awareness or thinking and action incentive to do more interventions that then lead to a cascading issues, because every single medication has other side effects. And then there's a shocking dearth of responsibility for those side effects. Another one is SSRIs, antidepressants, often cause weight gain. And now at psychiatrists, they're prescribing Ozempic with the weight loss pill with the SSRIs just right off the bat, because they're like, this is going to make you gain weight, so here's the weight loss drug. But the weight loss drug has a black box warning that it increases depression and suicidal ideation, so you need to up the SSRI. And it just, nobody understands. So that's why I say many of us are on the path of these drugs, and we should certainly be careful if we're being put on the path. But all of these drugs have other side effects, and then you need more drugs. That's why there's 4.9 billion prescriptions a year. So obviously everyone's case is unique. My high-level goal, and I think what we're trying to do in the country, is all to just tell you directly, the medical system is not there for you. It's just not, to have an off-ramp to these doctors using their authority to tell you that this is the route you have to go, and if you need to be stunted back to life. I mean, that's how they think. And this is something I'm talking to my sister about. I think we need to be honest. They're not there for you right now. And I just know that, seeing a functional medicine doctor, if you're able, understand. Really. Just very tactically, there's a functional medicine directory online. There's a lot of, I think there's so many pain points and so many people suffering and not being served by the medical system. There are a lot of new services online. I use a company called Function Health, where you can get a full analysis from a really good doctor remote to see your blood. It's a sign of potentially nutrient deficiency. There's puzzle pieces. So at the highest level, what I hope the medical system would do in a situation like yours is really be curious about what's going on inside your body. And instead of telling you that it's inevitable, you have to go down this pathway for the rest of your life and take pills, really be curious about where the underlying causes are of what's causing these issues, and then going on a path around food, around other habits. And I know you want to do that. I do, putting these simple ideas in the book, I was telling our editor, it's so simple, eat healthy, all these things. We had shopping lists, and I was amazed by how many people were like, it was just helpful to have the shopping list. I think people are clamoring for information. But very tactically, I do think functional medicine practitioners do have ways and are good at trying to discover what the underlying cause is. And there's a real fight right now to make that really the center of medicine, because everyone should have that type of care. They quit taking their vitamins. Yes. 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 Drug advertisements. All right. Are people going to go to jail for COVID and direct-to-consumer pharma advertising? Okay, so I'll just get on the pharma ads. I'll tell you just my personal experience of policies like this and what Secretary Kennedy is up against. It is impossible to define how complex these bureaucracies are and how interwoven they are. And when I see what he has to deal with and the level of legal review and level of, interaction with Congress and level of, the 70,000 people at the HHS and the other agencies to get, because theoretically it's like these things can just be signed, they can get done. I'm in there like, hey, let's go, and we're pushing really, really hard. But there are bureaucracies, the USDA, the HHS, others, that have been built through, I just see when I look at these agencies, hundreds of millions of dollars, decades of work to make these things as complex as possible and put as many checks and balances in to resist change. So on the DTC farm ads, that's something that's being talked about a lot. It is something that can be done. And we're working really hard on it. At a high level perspective, Bobby's got a team of real warriors, and there's huge, and this isn't against any one person, there's massive institutional pressure. There's massive Senate congressional pressure. Anything that's even whispered, if we're in a 10-person meeting, it's leaked by the time the meeting's over. There's senators calling. There's this incredible structure of forces to not get anything done. But I'd like to see that, and I know Bobby would, and a lot of other things happening. And I would just say, I think a lot of people here are advocates. A lot of people here want to see a lot of change. And the great thing this movement has is animation. And it's not that we shouldn't be pushing and frankly holding people to account. But I do think you're going to see a lot more activities like that. And I think even in the past 100 days, with what's happening to GRAS standards to actually know what's in our food, what's happening with food chemicals, what's happening with the vaccine panel move, insisting on more trials, more transparency, the fact that we've even started this conversation around health, the fact that we've reformed food stamps now to take soda off food stamps, we're revising the dietary guidelines, which is a massive thing. I mean, there's a lot that I think has happened in 150 days. There's a lot more to do, and my goal is that you'll see a lot of things like that, and we can all be happy and keep momentum for this movement alive, because the voter energy is going to be what keeps us alive. Yes? Yeah. So the question is how, because this system is so rigged with Rockefeller literally being written into the law since 1909, this corruption, how do we unwind it? And that's frankly what I'm trying to help on however I can from growing up in DC, because when I started awakening on these issues with my sister and, spending about 2 years just kind of thinking about these concepts, writing the book with her, I was like very depressed for a while. I was like, this is such a massive, dark issue. And I think we probably all feel that way to some degree. There's so many forces that are really against us. How can we possibly do this? And the way I see it in DC right now is that we are talking about a full-scale revolution of American society, American culture, the healthcare system, the agriculture system. It's radical. I mean, like when you start peeling this back, it's like a full change of the U.S. economy. So I don't think it's too incrementalist to say that is a multi-year journey. And when I think about how to do it, I do think it's important that we get impossible to disagree with wins, because literally what I'd put as an impossible to disagree with is soda being funded by food stamps. It's like $15 billion a year go from the federal treasury to soda for a program for lower income nutrition. It's just like you can't, the lobbyists did disagree with it, but you cannot disagree with that. I think the dietary guidelines, we should not be recommending sugar to 2-year-olds when we have a diabetes and obesity crisis among kids. We're gonna have that fight. It's like, can you create arguments that are actually impossible to create? Even what Secretary Kennedy did on the, if you saw, he fired the entire vaccine committee. I love that, and I think it fits in that because the media and the medical community cries bloody murder, and then you look at who was on the committee, they're all taking money from pharma. It's crazy. You look at the videos of them deliberating, this isn't done in Europe, we don't have any research on this, okay, vote it up. It's just like, it's indefensible. It's indefensible. So we're trying, in my head, to piece together as many micro things that are very important that keep making the case. And I'll be honest, I think we're trying actually to win the argument that we shouldn't trust the medical system. I mean, people say that it's like a bad thing. We shouldn't trust the medical system. And we all know that, but there's an argument that we need to win. I do think it's so important we keep talking about this. We keep buying, frankly, from vendors here that are making whole food. We start just voting with our wallets, talking about this revolution health, because if we can win this argument, and we're not there, I don't think we're there at full 50% of the country plus that understands this deeply. We got to win that argument. And then I just think if we have many of those steps, in 10 years, if that momentum holds, we'll be in a totally different trajectory. We'll be in a totally different trajectory. Fundamentally taking on agriculture incentives and trying to, do something aggressive to how those incentives work this year for soybeans and corn, which own essentially 5 states and are deeply, you got to be careful with it. I'm trying to build in my head a case and get unimpeachable wins that are impossible to disagree with to continue this momentum to where we have just radical change when we look back after 10 years. And I do think the wins will beget more wins. If this movement is popular in two years and it becomes the debate of the presidential cycle of who's making the country more healthy, we're just going to have more and more, and importantly, get more people in. There's nobody in the government, very few people that really understand these things. Everyone comes from traditional backgrounds. So I think this, we need to be a little patient in that respect. Yes?
Why isn't Cory Booker an ally of our
That's a great question. Why isn't Cory Booker an ally? I think,
about the same stuff.
yeah, when Casey and I started, a couple years ago, we met with Cory Booker a lot. I met with Nancy Pelosi. I met with a lot of Democrats. I mean, these are Democratic issues. If you close your eyes and listen to Bobby Kennedy talk, you'd think you were at a Democratic rally, 7 years ago. My political analysis is something deeply powerful in many ways happened during COVID. I think COVID, probably was one of the most important, societal, historical dynamics of our lifetime. I think it was going to have so many impacts from how we think about health to children's development to cultural issues, that we'll see for the next generation. One thing it did is, for whatever reason, the Democrats are the party of experts, and I think the fact that President Trump was kind of billed as against the vaccine, against the lockdowns, now for MAHA. It's just this reflexive effort to be against that, even though these are ideas that the left has often agreed with. So that actually gives me some hope, because I do think we have this intense Trump derangement syndrome in the world right now, where you literally have Democrats arguing for government-funded soda for kids, which is just crazy. But what gives me hope is I think the issues are so right. We're so right on this, and they are not purely ideological issues that I think, I hope people like Cory Booker turn around. People like Bernie Sanders, who lectured Bobby Kennedy at the confirmation hearings for taking on pharma companies. It was just wild. I think if we continue to win and continue to make the argument in the right way, and even though the media is saying we're all anti-science and crazy, if Americans can see that energy, that we're doing the right thing, that we're doing common sense things, and more people say, that makes a lot of sense and come on board, it changes politics. I can't emphasize enough how voters still do drive politics. What voters care about does drive the culture. I just cannot emphasize that enough. If there's enough voter energy behind an issue, things do get done. Yes?
Yes, sir. It seems to me that the industry has been cornered so that you can't do the peer-reviewed studies. If they want to smash them, they smash them. I think that it's very hard to argue without having those studies, but I think that you need to maybe look towards making a independent thing that they can't squash and stop these studies from being done. Because if you don't have that science behind you, then you're just arguing against the establishment. But if you can make them do the studies that they've been squashing and preventing, then we would be able to, kind of get on a more even playing field.
Yeah, how can we have the real research? This is, I think, something that's extremely important to understand. We talked about it a bit, but I'll just reiterate it. I've been very cynical coming in, but in the past 3 months, the cynicism that I have towards how scientific research is used to weaponize and achieve a corporate aim is it's breathtaking. It is absolutely breathtaking. Scientific documents, when it comes to recommendations for what we should eat or what we should put in our bodies with drugs, should be seen as nothing more than public relations documents for industries that profit from us being sick. The cynicism of what science is used for, and it gets to the point where there is significant pressure, and this is one of the darkest things I've seen the past 3 months, is that, policy, lobbyists make sense. I mean, there's a lot of stakeholders. We're talking about a large part of the U.S. economy. Large industries that employ 30 million people should have some route to make their voice be heard. I get that when we're talking about policy. But they lobby aggressively on transparency. They lobby aggressively to not do a study, on what's in our food, on food chemicals, on drugs that we're taking, that kids are taking. So what we have, and I think a huge part of the strategy in the next 4 years is Jay Bhattacharya at the NIH. The NIH is $50 billion of money. It's the largest research budget in the world. It actually, where that money goes actually incentivizes how other privately funded research is done. Up until now, about 95% of that money is on pharmaceutical R&D. It's essentially outsourced money for the pharmaceutical industry. The way the NIH has viewed the world is they've accepted that we're sick. They're not studying why we're getting sick. They're not asking tough questions. They're not asking why we're getting Alzheimer's. They're asking how can we spend hundreds of billions of dollars over 10 years to figure out some marginal Band-Aid injection for Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's, you're not going to inject our way out of cancer and out of diabetes and out of Alzheimer's and out of heart disease. This is about what we're eating. It's about the basic facts. But that's all they work on. So this is pretty dramatic that right now the NIH is empowered to ask core questions. And they're getting lobbied heavily not to ask those questions. But I think in the next couple of years, we are working to ask foundational questions about vaccines, about what's in our food, about the over-medicalization of kids, about whether nutrition interventions work better than all these drugs our kids are on, things like that. They're going to be asking the tough questions. And I do think once the scientific consensus is there, it's hard. That informs the policy. It makes it more difficult to have rigged policy. The problem is that the broken scientific consensus has led to terrible policy. Yes.
I know a large percentage of our medications come from China, and China is not exactly our friend. And we've had a lot of poison things come from them already. What do these doctors think is going to happen if we lose our ability to get our medication from China? And they've got all these people dependent on all these medications that they keep prescribing.
What do we think is going to happen if we move away from China? Yeah, that's a tricky issue. I think that by some numbers I've said, and this is probably slanted from the lobbyists who are trying to get what they want, but if we took away the China supply chain, we would be out of core drugs in 2 weeks. My whole theory on just drugs in general is that the problem isn't even the drug itself, it's just the greed of these companies, and it's not that a drug like Ozempic or a statin exists, and it is about freedom, and it's not about banning them. It's that the NIH has done research saying these drugs are the cure-all for everything and should be the first-line defense, and now the American Academy of Pediatrics says that Ozempic should be the first-line defense for an obese 12-year-old. So the research is wrong, and then that research and the FDA approval then go into how we pay for things. So I was speaking with folks who are involved with hospitals here and in healthcare. The only option often is to go on that drug path, that medicalization path. So to me, the problem is that the drugs, the standard of care, that they're recommended as the first line defense, that you have to take this shot, you have to take this pill, and then that's where all the money's going. I think we'd be in a much better world if we had transparency, full transparency on drugs, and then have freedom, let people able to make their own decision. But with where our $5 trillion in healthcare go, everyone has more flexibility where you don't just have to spend your money on drugs, which essentially you're jammed into that path right now, but can see a functional medicine doctor, can get more blood tests, can invest in dietary interventions, can go on that route. When it comes to China, I think we have a lot of reckoning to do that. I'd love to see a more fair rule pharmaceutical industry that's not tied to one of our adversaries, where we have incentives from the NIH and our medical authorities for people to create drugs that actually reverse and prevent disease and promote longevity, and they make them here and people have correct information. And I think the China thing is a huge problem.
What happens to people that are already dependent?
Well, there's work to restore those supply chains, which I support, but it's sensitive because we are dependent on China for a lot. But there's work and there's been talk about actions to take there. Yes. Oh, sorry. Get you next.
Thank you for coming. I'd like to understand more about the health insurance companies, because all Americans pay a lot for health insurance, yet they seem to dictate what tests we could get done, what medications we get. They almost control our
Right.
care, and functional medicine doctors aren't covered
Right.
by insurance. And
Yeah.
so what are we going to do to reform the health insurance companies?
So there's a foundational problem with insurance companies, which is they're incentivized for us to be sick. And I mentioned this I think a bit in the last speech, but I'll just break it down. With the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, there was all of this populist frustration around the profit margins insurance companies were getting. So by law, they can only make 15% profit margin. So that sounds good, I guess, in some way, but when you are only able to make 15%, you want the overall cost to grow. And the bill also included a provision that if costs grow, then they can raise premiums in order to get that 15%. So it created this terrible incentive where since Obamacare, we've more than doubled health premiums. They've gone up over 100% in that period of time because the companies can raise prices and get 15% of a larger pie. So there's no price pressure. And what does that mean if insurance companies want costs to go up? And I've talked to CEOs of the major insurers. They don't disagree with this. This is 100% known by them. They meet with us and they're like, we don't want people to be sick. We don't want people to be sick. We want people healthy. But your incentives are for people to be sick. Yes, that is true. It's undeniable. So you've got, again, there maybe are some evil people. They're not all just thinking, how do we make people sick? But there's no pressure at these large companies to control price or actually get people healthier. All these exercise programs insurers do, they're all just lip service. They're not actually putting money into that. They're not putting money into food programs. So that's a foundational thing. What I think needs to happen with health insurance, I mean, this is what I'm very passionate about. I started a company in this. It's about freedom. It's about not having a set code from the CMS department, which is who makes this. The CMS department that Dr. Oz runs makes the medical standard codes. They outsource that work to the American Medical Association, which is a pharmaceutical lobbying organization. So it's literally true that we have a pharmaceutical lobbying organization making all the codes that dictate what the insurer tells the hospital that it can be paid for, so what happens, and it's all interventionist based. If we just got rid of that, had people in control of their own money with HSA type dollars where you can have your own money, you can work with a doctor or a functional medicine doctor, pay them, have a market for paying who you want. Some people would go get their drugs, go to regular doctors. A lot more people would be looking for other routes. You can use that money on drugs or food or exercise or supplements that your doctor recommends. We need to open up a marketplace where people have more control over what they spend and have more competition. Because I know many people here, if they were incentivized and able to with their health insurance, would be seeking out different tools and different, more holistic remedies, and that's a good thing, yeah. There's a war, I see it all in terms of invisible hand. There's a war at the FDA on any type of diagnostic or preventative screening. The FDA to this day says that you should get preventative cancer screenings. They have massive barriers to any new diagnostic device that helps you understand if you're sick. There's an absolute invisible hand against people understanding what's happening in their body. And there's a massive invisible hand with the way the FDA is structured to have huge barriers to innovation, with the way our medical codes are structured to wait for you to get sick and then treat you once you're sick. There is an absolute invisible hand which we're trying to change. Yeah. I should have a better call to action, and I'll make one right now. I have a group where I'm trying to marshal actually that exact thing, and we've been very successful, kind of a group closely aligned with Bobby, the White House team, to push state bills, which are much easier to pass. So it's endchronicdisease.org. You can sign up there. But we are marshaling grassroots activity. I mean, that's really important. So end chronic disease, and that is a great strategy to fight for this on the state level. And I know a lot of people are probably involved in that. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, my wife is pregnant, and right now, and we have one. Thank you. We have one beautiful baby boy. Before her first birth, we watched a movie called The Business of Being Born, which yeah, it's amazing. But that was very eye-opening, and my sister and my wonderful wife Leslie speak about this so much more eloquently. But they really feel like there's like a spiritual issue with how we've medicalized birth. Every woman, of course, should be able to make their own decision, but I don't think there's full informed decision making. And you see that with this most miraculous act any human performs of creating life, and how the C-section rates, and it's another example which is just so clear of this cascading medical interventions. I mean, almost most of my friends who've given birth in a conventional setting, it's this cascading horror story of different issues that lead, and it's because you do one thing, it leads to the next thing, and the Pitocin and this, and it just all cascades into this, and that's often the most common birth story, which I think is a tragedy if that's not what they wanted and if they weren't fully informed. So as far as how our medical system can get there, we're working on a fertility policy and really education around this. So there is going to be some stuff coming out from the government on this and on birth options. So I think you'll see more from the government on that. I mean, we were able to find a birthing center that's attached to a hospital if there was an issue for a natural birth, but we were able to pay with insurance on that. I mean, yeah, we need to look at that, and there is a focus on mothers, and I mean that's a huge. These ideas are very much being discussed, and I hope I'm actually going to check whether that's in the policy. I mean, we want to support informed consent. I don't know, and I think there's something dark that's happening with the medicalization of birth. Again, everyone should do what they want, but we need information and we need to celebrate that process. Yeah. Right.
I mean, it was like ridiculous.
Yeah, it's the Hep B right away. It's crazy. Yes. Yes.
I want to know what you thought about the chemtrails.
Yeah. I think it's a very serious issue. The Secretary of Transportation, I'm very close with his wife. His name's Sean Duffy. His wife's Rachel Campos Duffy, who hosts Fox and Friends on the weekend, and she's covered this issue a lot. And I saw a segment. I was chatting with her, and I know there's been discussion between the Health and Human Services Department and the Department of Transportation. And they're taking it very seriously, and I hope that there's going to be an announcement on that. I mean, there's on chemtrails, Sorry, guys. She asked about chemtrails and cloud seeding. It's honestly not something I know a lot about, but I know enough very smart, respected people who are very concerned, and I know this is being talked about at the top.
Well, even Tennessee outlawed it, and the federal government says, well, you don't own the sky so many thousand feet up.
Huh.
protect us from global warming, and they're going to poison us.
There's very high level discussions on that, and I hope there's action on that. There's people are taking it very seriously. And Secretary Kennedy has mentioned it as HHS Secretary. I know they're looking into that, and yeah, but he's working with the Transportation Department. Yes.
I get really nervous. I'm sorry. I got an email from Children's Health Defense on June 10th of this year that the fourth, oh. I can't talk like this. Okay. Anyway, that the FDA has recently approved wild-type foods to make lab-grown salmon, and it's actually the fourth company that's gotten approval.
Right.
Is anyone going to fight back against that? Please?
I'll address that specifically and make a higher level point. Let me first make the higher level one, then get to that. From seeing on the inside, 50% of Bobby's team still isn't even through the Senate. And he started and had like literally just a handful of actually trusted political people around him. And these organizations like the FDA have tens of thousands of people who've been doing the work on every part of the US economy for years and years and years. So announcements like that are not clearly aligned with MAHA are part of career processes that have been going on for years from people that have been there for years. I think that's something that is being looked at, and there have been announcements that the leadership didn't even fully know about that have been reviewed, reversed. I know there was a lot of discussion on the mRNA for chickens, and there is a lot of dialogue as these things come out. But I will say it is inevitable. It is inevitable, no matter how perfect the execution is, that you're going to see disappointing things come through these massive agencies, often through processes that don't even have political oversight statutorily, that there should be outrage about, but should not, I would say, Secretary Kennedy does not deserve to have us leave his back yet. So I just want to make that, it's not an excuse. It's just that there will be, as perfect as the execution is, there will be unrelenting media and stories about how it's screwing up, how there's things. And HHS is the largest department in the US government, and it's almost guaranteed. On that specific issue, I know she's talking about lab-grown fish and meat. There's deep concerns on that. I mean, the foundational message of MAHA is that we need to eat whole food and real food. And I think there's a lot of concern about that. Yes.
I know you probably can't reverse it all overnight. I understand that, but could you demand honesty in labeling?
Yeah, labeling, honesty and labeling. When we talked about ideas and things that we can do in the next 2 years that start really putting the pillar down, we've got to have transparency. Just like I'm talking about how soda on SNAP or dietary guidelines that don't recommend sugar for kids, we've got to help farmers. We've got to put the mantle down for regenerative ag. Thank you, so many people, and I'm going to be in touch with a lot of you. Like, it is the foundational thing we need to do is work together to build this bridge to a reform of our agriculture system. But labeling is a great place to start. We need support on labeling. The labeling is in the process right now, and that is under political control at the FDA. It's unrelenting lobbying about just simple transparency, but we're ready to take on a fight on transparency because that's a losing battle for the other side. Texas actually just passed a labeling bill, SB 25. It was the single most lobbied bill in Texas this year, and the Maha Moms legislators won that out, and it was a huge defeat for big food. So states, back to the state work, endchronicdisease.org, we're marshaling this, but we're working on state bills around the country to create this patchwork of labeling laws, because then the industry actually needs better standards, or better standards from our side, and then we're not going to go below the aggressiveness that the states like Texas have done. So the state work on labeling is actually really important. Yeah, 100%. We need to do labeling. That's a huge thing. Yes.
So I'm thinking of the power of the people, and places like this and events like this are a start and to break the barrier of conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. This is all real going on, and the more people are quiet, the more they can do with us what they want. And we need to move forward. When we all leave out of here, we need to speak up. We need to talk to our neighbors. We need to give that information we just get here to other people. And also, it's all the Western world. It's not just here in Pennsylvania or in Kentucky or whatever. It's all what is under the Western world, what they have put under their power and infiltrated systems. And it is up to our power to follow these things and know what is not good for us and not comply with these things.
Thank you. A couple more.
Yeah, thank you. I want to say I'm in absolute solidarity with you. We have done everything we could possibly do to make sure that we see RFK Jr. doing what he's doing now. And I believe it is a 10-year vision. When we're gone and our children are still moving on, let's just hope that things are going to be better and straighter. But I wanted to say, as a single mom with a belly that I'm trying to figure out, and I've gone to functional medicine doctors and integrative medicine doctors and found out how you can easily waste your time and money, and it's just really a difficult journey, but it is a learning journey. And I wanted to sort of tag on to what this woman just said and the mother back there, and I want to say that it's almost like, not that mothers are the supreme, but everyone was born from a mother with the help of a dad. It should actually be MMAHA, Mothers Making America Healthy Again. And we need to share our stories, because not only do we have these tragic, traumatic stories that we went through at the hospital, that, when our children have their birthdays, we also think about our experience at the hospital and what we didn't know. And that's the thing, is we're doing the best with what we know. We didn't know. And also growing up as girls who were told to be put on birth control, and the things that we just didn't know, and how we're suffering as moms today and our families, and we're seeing the hospitals kill our aunt and kill our families and our mothers who just aren't catching on, that are now, are dying because of all the things that the medical doctors did. I just think it's so important that we continue sharing our stories.
Yep.
We have, you talk about your story with your dad. You just brought up another story. We need to share our stories. We don't have to be angry, although anger, sometimes puts some fire in us. But we need to just share our stories, and we do need to support each other. And I think everyone here is just one big family, because we all get it. And we want to do everything we can to support you and your organization. And the last thing I want to say is how important it is that of course, we're having so much compassion for these vaccine injured. We have so much compassion and understanding. I think we just need to have more compassion and understanding with each other, and with all the things that the moms are going through, and the technology that we're raising our children in. And it's just such a big beast. It is such a big beast. And I'm from the DC metro area. It's really dark. And so thank you for being the light in that darkness, because I know it's a dark place. Thank you to your sister. I'm doing everything I can to stick up and stand up for RFK Jr. and you and everything that you're trying to do, because I believe in you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you for everything you've said, in solidarity to
Thank you.
And we, and my son, we support you and everything you're doing.
Thank you.
No matter what anyone says. Okay? And congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. And it was a great message on the call to action. I should have done this, but this is just a group. Some close allies have started, and we're working with Dell, and we're working with just the whole Maha network, just volunteer, to channel the state action, medical freedom bills, the food dye bills, labeling bills. It is actually extraordinary what's happening in the states, and it's really giving Secretary Kennedy a lot of leverage as the state action happens. So that is a call to action, endchronicdisease.org. And you giving that testimony to, your state lawmakers, I mean, it's actually really, really like working really well. Like calling, this is what we're trying to do, but like calling state lawmakers when they're channeled to specific actions, it really makes a big difference. And we are trying to marshal that. Okay, one more question. Who's got a, yes. Okay. Oh, good. Oh. Oh yeah. Added sugar. Oh yeah, added sugar. Oh yeah, I mean, my hypothesis is if you put whole food, milk, fruit, vegetables, steak in front of a kid, they can eat as much as they want and mostly be healthy. You're pretty much there. I mean, the amount of sugar that's in Coca-Cola is like 30 oranges or something. It's like you can't eat that. So no, it's about refined added sugar. Yeah. Okay, one more quick one, and then I gotta go. Yes.
Whether they test for mold.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. How does this movement impact global power? I see it visually with my small vantage point, at the White House. How does that global power manifest itself? It manifests, with meetings from CEOs, meetings from groups, calls from senators who are being influenced. All areas of the U.S. economy, like I see it visually, descend to make their case. And again, it's not invalid that they're making the case. I don't think we have a terrible system. I mean, we're talking about the whole U.S. economy. So I don't think it's necessarily invalid, but you see it and it's dark. And Bobby Kennedy is able to win arguments because he has voters behind him. That's just the truth. When you get into a closed-door meeting, money is brought up, economic impact is brought up, voters of how many people are employed by soybean or this industry or that industry in a state is brought up. These are all brought up, and having a clear voter mandate trumps those arguments. I just can't, it works. What a candidate runs on, what they talk about, calling state candidates, local candidates to care about this issue, them talking about it during the campaign, that's how he has power. So this is not a monolith. And the pharma industry and the healthcare industry and the insurance industry and the big food industry have very little trust in America right now. They're not in a strong position. They're using all the influence they can, but it's not insurmountable. But the power is the voter mandate. When you're debating something like firing the ACIP committee or opening up a conversation about regenerative agriculture and pesticides, it really is about how much mojo Secretary Kennedy has from voters to talk about this issue. And the argument I'm always giving is this is what voters voted on, it's what they demanded. And that argument does work. So that's how you beat it. And if you bring these arguments in the light, if you bring this ridiculousness, I know we're all doing it, talking about how ridiculous some of these systems are, bringing things to light is really making a big difference. Guys, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.